Hey everybody, welcome to Average Guy Opinions. I am your average guy, John Corelli. Um, Today I'm going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 deniers and that I work with one. So that's interesting. Last week she told me that masks don't work. And I'm getting to an age where if people are going to talk crazy, I just go, yeah, okay. And I just walk away if I have the opportunity. That's fine with me. You go ahead and believe what you want to believe, even though everything's been proven. And that's the upsetting part, I think, is we have these phones right here with all the information on the planet. Literally, you can get to almost everything. And unfortunately, human beings are basically just primates that can talk. So we've mastered language and how to build shit, but we're still idiots. And when we're given free will, we'll often make the least educated choice possible. Kind of frustrating. She denied that the Spanish flu killed a bunch of people and that we did shutdowns during the Spanish flu. I fact checked that. I knew it, but I still fact check it just to make sure when I fact checked it a year ago that I didn't mess it up. Spanish flu killed anywhere from 17 million to 100 million people. She, quote unquote, today. Let me back up a little bit and tell you how this whole discussion started. Um, I work in Cherry Creek School District, as many of you know. We have two major neighboring school districts: Aurora Public Schools and Denver Public Schools. Aurora Public Schools. Now, I don't think this is official yet, but they have talked about requiring teachers to have vaccinations in order to work next year. Controversial, to say the least, right? Honestly, even I am like, even though I think it's a good idea on a level, because you are a public servant working with touching literally hundreds of kids a day, or at least dozens who touch others. I mean, let's be honest, or it's just a big germ show. I've been there. I've only worked in that system 6 years. The first 3 years, I got colds a lot because kids are gross, and so are adults. To be honest, there's a lot of gross people, and I'm gross sometimes too. And I got a lot of colds, but then I built up my immunity, and I haven't had an issue and for the last 2 or 3 years, the colds I get were less severe, and I did get hit, whether it was the coronavirus or not. But back in April of last year, right as this stuff was getting started, I was diagnosed as pneumonia. Whether COVID was involved or not, they said we're not going to do a test because they didn't have a lot of tests. That was early on, like I said, in April, really a month or so after this whole thing started. And they just gave me what I needed. They gave me some really strong antibiotics, and I was fine after a few days. So, anyway, back to how this all started. So we were talking about, well, if Aurora Public Schools decides to require vaccinations for their teachers and probably their paraprofessionals, which is what this person does, it's what I do. Probably for any staff, that full-time staff, I would imagine. I don't know how it would work for substitutes. It's a real can of worms, isn't it? But assuming they do it, most likely we will follow suit, and so will Denver Public Schools. It's three huge school districts, probably, I'm guessing, servicing probably anywhere from 150,000 to 200,000 children every year. The reason I give that estimation is because we have 55,000 students in Cherry Creek. So I'm just guessing. I'm multiplying it by three and just taking a guess. It's a lot of kids, it's a lot of teachers, a lot of staff. So how do we get here? So, oh yeah, my boss, we were working in a classroom today, and my boss brought it up because it was a very light day. As I've mentioned probably in some of my other videos, we have a pretty high percentage of Muslims at my school, and today is, I believe, the last day of Eid. I believe it's called Eid al Fatir or Fatir. Not exactly sure how you pronounce it. But most of the kids were gone. It's the end of Ramadan. Ramadan is a month of fasting, 28 days of fasting. It's a moon cycle. And the moon cycle ended either last night or tonight. Probably a lot of the kids will remain at home. Friday, I'm guessing, that just take a long weekend. I could be wrong about that. There's an Islamic center I pass on my way to work, and a lot of people are pouring into it today and to celebrate the end of Ramadan. So, so we had some time to talk, is what I'm getting at. Is like we had very few students today, so we did some work and we did some BSing too. And so my boss brought that up to this lady, the same lady I just told you about, that saying masks didn't work last week. And rather than just saying, I'd rather not do that and maybe keeping quiet, she went on this kind of tirade. Not super bad. She wasn't screaming or anything, but she's a loud person already. And she's like, "Oh, I'm not getting that. I don't believe in that. That's not proven they were. It's going to take 15 years before we see the effects of this vaccine on people, and we don't know." And a lot of that, she has some points, and I just sat there and remained quiet. But then she said, "The Spanish flu wasn't that bad," and I go, "Wrong," and she just looked at me. I go, "It was bad." "Well, you didn't there were no shutdowns for it." And I go, "Yeah, there were. I don't know how much mask wearing there was because there wasn't a lot of weren't a lot of photographs taken, but there were definitely shutdowns, recorded shutdowns in the annals of history. You can look it up. But yeah, so the Spanish flu killed anywhere from the conservative estimate of 17 million people to 100 million people. It was like a modern day plague. You got to understand, we barely had 2 billion people at that point. 100 years ago, we had maybe 2 billion people on the planet, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, not exactly sure. But we've been really good at populating the last 100 years. We're up to 7.5 billion now. But yeah, so let's go long range and say 100 million people died out of 2 billion. That's what, 5% of the population? That's huge. That's really massive. And even if it's only 17, it's still like a percent or 2% of the population. So that was big. And then so I was just like, "Wrong." And she just kind of looked at me and she continued to rant, but I could see she turned a little red. And then she continued on her rant. And then it's like up the ante. It's like, okay, well, I didn't say enough bullshit yet, so I'm going to say some more bullshit. And she said, "Oh, well, this is just like a bad flu." I was like, "You're starting to sound like one of those mega church nut job pastors like Kenneth Copeland or somebody who's saying, just pray it away." No, I'm looking at the numbers right now. COVID cases, COVID 19 cases, let's be specific. This started in 2019. That's why it's called COVID 19. Nearly 3 million deaths. 3.3, I'm going to round up, 3.3 million deaths. 2018-19 flu deaths, 80,000. Not even close, right? Not even close. That's like, what is that? I'll do the math. So 800,000 would be a quarter. So that's 2.5%. Nothing. And so she said, "Yeah, the numbers are very similar to COVID and the flu." I go, "No, it's not." I just did. She got, not having it. I go, "It's not." And I go, "You can disagree, but if you're not going to look at fucking numbers that have been compiled by, I'm going to guess, reliable sources like the CDC or the World Health Organization, that's on you now. I'm not going to back down just because you're going on your rant and you're in the minority on this." It's like the psycho fucker on the bus. I think Bill Burr or somebody did a great bit about this where why is somebody not putting a tattoo on this head like might be the next Hitler? Why are we letting this guy rant on the bus and make everyone uncomfortable when the other fucking 95% of us, even if it's only 73% of us, we are the majority. We go, "Shut the fuck up, sit down, and when you get to your stop, ring the bell and get the fuck off. I don't care what your issues are. Are you low on your meds? Well, let's get you some meds." I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I also know there are a lot of just fucking assholes out there. I'm not saying this person's an asshole. Actually, I generally like this person. We get along fine. But when people go a little nut jobbery, I'm going to call them on it. And if they're unhappy about that, it's like, well, then let's have a debate. Why don't I get my phone out and show you the numbers if you don't believe the numbers, if you've listened to your QAnon fucking Breitbart bullshit too much, okay? So the good thing is, right after, I'm pretty good at smoothing things over with people. It's from just being a wimp most of my life, or doing comedy, or just not really liking conflict. I don't search it out, but I also am not going to just lay down when people talk bullshit. But so, right after that, we had a snack outside with the kids, and we had good conversation. Everything was fine. And so everything was good. And then, like an hour or so later, maybe a couple hours later, I went to lunch, and she was in another room, and I could hear her ranting. And I assume it was about that stuff. Because as soon as she saw me go by, she went whoosh and got super quiet with the person she was ranting to. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. If she's talking shit about me, I don't care. If it's not worthy of telling me and saying, "Hey, I think you're wrong," I don't care about being told I'm wrong, but I'm going to try to prove I'm right. That's not good enough for me. Bring some proof. There's more to an argument than passion and belief. You need to prove some shit, okay? That's all I ask. I don't think that's a big ask. So that's pretty much it for this rant about COVID. I will do the next episode on a couple things that are happening in the news. We've got AOC versus MGT. That's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez versus Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is a nut job. And then I'm going to talk about the new Israel and how the Israelis just might be turning into the people they ran away from about 80 years ago. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for listening and watching. Appreciate you. See you next time. Bye.